Okay, good. So today's topic is machine matzot, and the questions of their permissibility, their usability, and some hashkafic questions. And if we have enough time, first of all, thanks to Rabbi Joshua Flug, that it is his sources that he compiled that I'm using. Also, I'll read the honorable judge is not here for this.
He's there.
Oh, he is. Oh, good.
He's talking on the phone.
Because there was a case of Manischewitz versus the IRS. A very interesting case in the I think it was in the 1940s. So we'll touch upon that also if we have enough time. Okay, so what would the issue be, or might the issue be, with machine matzot, right? What difference does it make? If you're making it by hand, you're making it by machine. As long as you're careful that there is no chametz, that it does not leaven, and the argument can and has been made that the machine matzot works so expediently and so efficiently that there's even less of an issue of chametz when it comes to the machine matzot than there could be by the hand matzot. So let's.
Are we talking shvura or regular? Or?
Let's just get started. Okay. So the very first source we have, as we like to do, is a pasuk, the verse in Exodus in Shemot. The pasuk says, "Ushmartem et ha-matzot." You shall guard, you shall watch over these matzot. Ki be'etzem hayom hazeh, because on this very day, in the midst of this day, hotzeiti et tzivotechem, I brought out your hosts, me'eretz Mitzrayim, from the land of Egypt. Ushmartem et hayom hazeh, you shall observe this day, lidorotechem, for all generations, chukat olam, an everlasting statute. Ushmartem et hamatzot. Now the Gemara does learn out here, Ushmartem, right? If you look the way the word matzot is written, it's the same thing as mitzvot. The Gemara learns out more generally also, you shall guard the mitzvot. And the Gemara says, mitzvah baliyadcha al tachamitzena. If a mitzvah comes to your hand, the opportunity arises, al tachamitzena, don't let it become chametz, right? Don't sit around with it. But here it's talking about guarding the matzot. Let's see how there is a halachic ramification from these words. The Mishnah in Psachim was discussing different types of matzot that could or could not be used for Pesach. The Gemara says, Chalat Toda, Urikike Nazir. The Toda is a thanksgiving offering, a sacrifice. Accompanying that korban toda were 40 loaves, 10 each of 4 different types. And one of those types were matzot. So let's say I made these matzot, so these matzot that were at least designated initially to use for my lachmei toda, I can't then decide to divert these matzot and use them on Pesach. Similarly, a Nazir, upon the completion of his being a Nazir, taking that Nazirite oath which prohibited him from any grape wine products, from cutting his hair, or from coming in contact with a deceased, at the conclusion of his being a Nazir, he brings, amongst other things, Rikike Nazir, these different Rikikim type of crackers, which are also matzot. So let's say the Mishnah said I can't use those chalot of the Thanksgiving offering or the Rikikim of the Nazir, which actually fulfill the obligation, the requirements of matzah. Nevertheless, I can't use those for my mitzvah of matzah. The Gemara explains, which is source number 2 there, Psachim, the Talmud 39b, Lamed Tet, Lamed Bet, Mina Hani, we have it both in Hebrew and English. From where do we derive this? Amar Rava. Rava says, the Amar Kraz, the pasuk says, Ushmartem et hamatzot. You must guard these matzot. Matzah hamishtameret l'shem matzah. It must have been guarded for the intent, for the use of it being matzah. Yatztazu, to exclude these situations, she'ein mishtameret l'shem matzah ela l'shum zevach, which were not being guarded, being set aside for, designated for matzah, rather it was being designated in order to accompany whichever sacrifice it was. So we see that a matzah needs this shmirah. It needs this guarding. How much guarding does it need? And then we'll need to understand, right, what does it mean guarding? Right? But the Gemara concludes elsewhere that it's got to be at least for the kneading of the dough and for the baking of the dough. Okay? Yes, Tov.
This is going to tie in, but we learned there's a best way to do a mitzvah, and there's...
Yeah, okay, so we'll see, Tov, we'll see as we work along, what is lechatchila, what's the ideal way, what is b'di avad, what is a way that's not the ideal, but nevertheless one does fulfill the mitzvah by doing it in such a way. Yeah.
So if you have baked the unleavened requirement breads, for sacrifice, for the showbread, there's the stack that's unleavened.
We're not talking about that.
Right, but so if it was, the intent has to be for the Pesach matzahs always.
That's what we're
saying. From the
saying.
beginning.
That's what we're saying. Yes. Okay. What will make something considered to be lishma, for the proper purpose, and what will be considered shemira? Meaning, we'll see in a moment, Rabbeinu Asher, there is a dispute if a non-Jew does it with a Jew supervising that which is being done by the non-Jew. Will that be considered sufficient? Is that considered a shemira? Is that considered lishma, being done for the intent and purpose? Or is that not considered? Right?
When we have wine, the wine has to be with a Jew.
That's something...
I know that, but that's something that's holy. And matzah is also holy.
Matzah is not holy.
No, it is not?
Matzah is not holy. I mean, there are lots of holes in it, though. I know those things are saying.
Okay,
right?
right,
I have to beat
okay.
him to it. Right? Right. Matzah is something through which we perform a mitzvah.
Okay.
But matzah is not holy. Okay, so the Rush brings two opinions. Rabbeinu Asher, right? Rabbeinu Asher is about the year 1000, I believe, 1000 to 1100, right? Or probably even later than that, because he quotes Rashi, right? Let's say 1100, 1200. And Rabbeinu Asher, what he does is he extracts, whereas Rashi on the Talmud, on the Gemara, will explain what the Gemara is saying, the Gemara's question, the Gemara's answer. Rabbeinu Asher, for the most part, extracts the halacha from the Gemara and brings different opinions on it. It was his son who wrote the Tur Shulchan Aruch, from which the commentator on that, the Beit Yosef, Rav Yosef Karo, wrote what we know as the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law. So he was, to a certain degree, at least one of the grandfathers of the Shulchan Aruch, right? Not biological, but in terms of his teachings. Right? The Shulchan Aruch draws mostly from the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher, from the Rambam, and others. So there he brings two opinions, underlined there on the bottom of source sheet number 1, the first page. Rav Kohen said, Exal Katav, Latzeit Yidei Chova, in order to fulfill one's obligation. B'layla harishona, on the first night, Eino el b'matzah, shaf'a Yisroel l'shem matzah. It's got to be matzah, baked by a Jew, with the intention of that being matzah. Now, as was brought up, we differentiate between the first night, for us the first 2 nights. In other words, the Seder, the matzah that we eat at the Seder for the mitzvah of eating matzah, and any matzah that we might eat during the rest of Pesach. We have an obligation to eat matzah at the Seder. Right? We make the blessing, Asher Kiddishanu v'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzah. We also make hamotzi lechem in haaretz. It's bread also. Right? It is also the regular sustenance. But we make a second blessing, there is a specific mitzvah to eat matzah. So therefore the rest of Pesach, you don't have to eat matzah. You can't eat chametz, but you don't want matzah, don't eat matzah. Right?
Okay.
You don't have to. It doesn't do well for your stomach, right? So then don't. Okay, but but if you are eating, you have to make sure, of course, that it's not chametz. Whereas the first night we have this added requirement, according to Rav Kohen Tzedek, that it's got to be baked by Yisroel l'shem matzah, with the intent that this will be matzah. Shenemar, as it says, our pasuk, ushmartem et hamatzot, guard these matzot. It must be guarded, that it's being watched, dedicated, designated, supervised l'shem matzah. The Rav Haigon Kasav, and Rav Haigon, he wrote, matzah sha'afa nachri, if a non-Jew baked it in front of Yisroel, al yidei shimur katikuna, and the Jew supervised it properly, muteret li Yisroel la'ochla, it's mutar for Yisroel to eat it. Ubale, and now it's not clear, is that throughout, is that only for the rest of Pesach, or is that even for the mitzvah of the Seder night? Ubale mas v'chasidim hatamimim, and those who are scrupulous, who are righteous, machmir al atzman, they are machmir, they act strictly upon themselves like the gaonim, hamachmirin, v'lashin v'ofen ba'atzman, and they'll do their own kneading and their own baking. Right? And he brings an idea for that. The Mishnah Brura.
What is mutar?
Sorry?
What is mutar?
What is mutar?
When you said
It's permitted.
Permitted.
that someone supervised
Mutar. It's permitted.
So I didn't know what the word meant.
I'm sorry. The Mishnah Brura, which is the top of the second side of the sources, writes as follows. On the idea of al yidei eino Yehudi, being done by a non-Jew, hatam, the reason dichtiv, as it says, our pasuk, ushmartem et hamatzot, you must guard those matzot, mashim yized shmir shatem shamash lo tachmitz, right? And that there's a shmira, of course, that you guard it, that it should not become leavened. Hitkavein l'shem matzah shel mitzvah, an intention for a mat that is be used for the matzah of the mitzvah, v'nachri, and a Gentile, or a cheresh shoita v'katan, or a person who is mentally incompetent, either unmatured or unable. Lav b'nei shimor ninu, they're not able to do this guarding. V'eskimu hari poskim, many poskim have concluded. Da'afil Yisroel omid al gaban, even with an adult Jew standing over them, supervising, umazhirin, and warning them, sheyichavnu, reminding them, sheyichavnu l'shem matzat mitzvah matzah, have in mind the mitzvah of matzah, gam kein lo mahani, it's not going to help. Ve'eino yosi d'chavato afilu b'diavad, and you will not fulfill your mitzvah using that, even b'diavad, even if ex post facto you've used that. Did you fulfill your mitzvah? No. And there are those who are more lenient. If there is a Jew supervising, excuse me, and warning them, have in mind, do this for the matzah. Then we say, I died to Yisroel ka'avid. They're following the directive given to them by the Yisrael. The Katwa Bach, V'Magen Avram, Diyesh Lisavuk Aleim. One can rely alayim on them, If that's your only option, you can rely on them, and bidi eved, it would be good. V'tov. However, it's best, sheYisroel ba'atzma yisayam gam ken k'tzat, that the Yisroel should also help them somewhat, right? And better that it be done by a Jew who is not mentally matured, presumably because he would more follow, he would to a greater degree follow our directives than to have it done by a non-Jew.
Excuse me, this
Yes.
is before it gets home. This is while it's being manufactured.
When it doesn't get holy, it's going to be used
No,
for a
I don't
mitzvah.
mean that. I'm saying we're talking about all this watching. That's before you bring it home. Is that
That's when
correct?
it's being made into matzah.
Made into matzah. Okay.
When it's being made into the
Okay.
matzah.
Right.
Okay. So now, can a machine produce something that is considered to be lishma? Right? Right? This is before we have, right, artificial intelligence, right? So can a machine be considered, let's see a little bit first. Is it a question or
Very quickly, I just want to say, if Shmura Matzah is all Jewish completely, right? Every bit of the operation, would we guess?
yes.
Okay. So do the people?
What do you call shmura matzah?
What?
Talking about the hand shmura matzah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So do the people at all connected to the mitzvah of eating it at all? What they're doing over there? Is there some connection with that?
I don't understand the question. They're making it for people to eat.
The ones who are making, the Jewish people who are making it, are they somehow connected to the mitzvah?
They're connected to the mitzvah that they made it.
So they,
Yeah. Okay. Janik, you hold it or? Okay. So the Gemara discusses a machine in a different instance. This is the Gemara Chulin 16a Tet Zayin Amud Aleph. Amar Ma, Hashochet b'muchani. If a person shechted using a wheel, shchitato keshera, that is considered to be a kosher shechita. V'hatanya, the Gemara challenges, but didn't we learn shchitato pesula? In such a case, the shchita, the slaughtering, is disqualified. It's invalid. The Gemara answers lo kashya. That's not a contradiction. Ha besarna de pachra, ha besarna de maya. One is talking about a potter's wheel. That's considered as if the person who set the wheel in motion did it. The other one is a water
wheel.
A water mill?
You say water wheel.
A water wheel?
Yeah.
Okay.
The water pushes the wheel.
Yeah, right. Because there is no human involvement. Ibayit ema, or alternatively, we can answer Hav Habasanar Damaya. Both are talking about this water wheel, and in one case it is good, and in another case it's not good. Velo kashya. Ha b'koach rishon, ha b'koach sheni. Is it the first power, the first onrush of the water? So who released the water? The man. A man released the water and caused that. And as opposed, that would be considered a kosher shchita. And the other one is a koach sheni, as it continues to flow. And there is not this human involvement, and therefore it would not be good. Chiha, similar to a statement, a teaching of Rav Papa. Rav Papa, Hayman de kafte lechavre. A person tied up his friend. We'll see here, not such a good friend. Va'ashkil alei bitka demaya. And then he directed upon him this jet of water, umate, and it killed him. Chayev. He's liable for murder. My time, a gire didehu. This was his arrow. If a person shoots an arrow, we don't say, hey, it was the arrow that killed him, not me. It was the bullet, not me. You shot the arrow, you shot the bullet, you shot the water, you are responsible. That's only the first flow. Grama ba'almahu. But if it's the continuous flow, that's not considered full murder. Might be a lesser degree manslaughter, but it won't be full murder because that was not done directly by him. Now, interestingly enough, by netilat yadayim, when we're washing our hands for a meal, so we're supposed to use also koach gavra. We're supposed to use our strength. We're supposed to pour ourselves. If there is no cup, so what a person would do is would turn on the faucet, off the faucet, on the faucet, off the faucet, on, off. When I get off a plane early morning, it's a little more challenging because over there, right, there are no faucets in the airports now. Everything is motion activated. So when I commandeer 2 sinks and I go, and by then that one stopped, and I get my negelwasser done. Okay, but that's the idea of koach gavra. If it's even though you're not actually pouring it, if it's your initial, if you initiated that, so I try to initiate it each time, then that would be considered okay.
Excuse me.
Yes.
These water wheels are turning something else. They're not, they're turning other things that are working.
They might be.
Well, thank you.
They might be. Yeah, presumably they are.
Yeah, it's grinding the flour.
Thank you.
Yeah, presumably they are. Yeah. But over here we're talking about when it's slaughtering. Right? This is a question, this is just an example of machinery doing work, right, that needs to be done by a person. Is that considered as if the person did it? And we have here the idea of that the koach rishon, right, that is considered to be the first movement is considered to be that which was initiated by an act of the person. By our machine would be turning on the switch and starting the machine. That would be considered koach gavra. Now the Chazon Ish writes, if the beginning of the process was lishma, then the rest of it will also consider to be lishma. But in terms of that's what he personally felt. But in terms of practical halacha, the Chazon Ish felt one should not use machine matzah for the mitzvah of achilat matzah.
The first blessing.
Meaning when you are eating, you're making your bracha on the matzot at the Seder, and then you wash, you make your 2 brachot, and you eat the matzah. That matzah, he held, should ideally be
Shmura matzah.
right, the handmade. See, shmura matzah, right? As you're using the term for hand matzah, there also is shmura machine matzah,
Really?
which means that it's been guarded, right, from an early,
I thought it was all handmade.
right. Okay, so I would say shmura hand matzah for the Seder. Now, that's more general about a machine. How about machine? Yes, John.
So, I think you might be covering it, I might be jumping the gun, but can't we say that into the machine, with intent, whoever the Jewish controller of the machine line is, they've specified, and they put in the flour in the first bin, and they're working the...
First of all, it's not always Jewish people involved in these
most of those factories like
in the factories. I don't know if that's the case.
Well, then it's a non-issue because we've just said that that person can't have the intent.
Well, there were different opinions if there are Jews. There are different opinions if there are Jews supervising.
So,
right?
For the purposes of this, let's say it's the Jewish personnel. So the first run of flour and water, the first lot is put into the main huge bin by the Jewish starter, and then the computers in the line are controlled by Jewish people, and isn't that with intent?
So that's the issue that we're discussing, right? That's the very issue we're discussing. Is that considered to be sufficient or not? So the Chazon Ish personally held that it would be good enough. Many disagree with him. And lahalacha, that's why he said best not, right, to use the hand shmura for the actual mitzvah matzot at the Seder. Okay, now, how did the poskim address machine matzah specifically? Rav Shlomo Kluger was the main objector. To him, it was obvious that machine matzot cannot be used for the Seder. Right? When I say the Seder, I mean for the mitzvah of eating matzah the Seder, not for adding to your soup afterwards. Right? For all of us gebrachters. Right? And therefore, he went further and said it should be prohibited throughout the whole Pesach, lest someone come and use it for the Seder and not fulfill their mitzvah that they have a chance to do once a year. Others, Rav Yosef Shaul Nathanson, right, 1808-1875, he was the main proponent of machine matzot, and he said that it's not comparable, right, to something being done by a person who's mentally incompetent. Here it's being run by people, right? They're not magical, they're being operated by humans, right? And therefore, they can be used even, according to that opinion, even for the Seder. Now, others argue, interestingly, that by shchita we needed the koach gavra, we needed the human hands strength doing it. We don't find that by matzah, and therefore there is no real issue over there. So that is the gamut we have over here of, on one end of the extreme, don't have it at all on Pesach, lest you'll come to use it by the Seder, and others saying you could even use it for your mitzvah of achilat matzah. Are there specific chametz concerns when it comes to the machine matzah? So Shulchan Aruch, the very bottom there, has certain requirements. Right, here's where we get the 18 minutes. It says, Ein lashim b'makam hashemesh. We can't knead it out in the sun. Ubiyom ha'unan, even during a cloudy day, it is prohibited. Tachat kol avir rakia, underneath the sky, outside. Mishum diyoma di'iva kulei shimsha. Interesting. A cloudy day is all full of sun. Right? It's very interesting. Because nowadays you hear all the warnings, right? Don't go out in the sun, and don't think on a cloudy day you're protected from the sun. You're not. Right? You think you're protected, so you don't protect yourself, and the ultraviolet rays, that's when they really catch you, and that we see already over here in Shulchan Aruch. Right, that the concern is even on a cloudy day. And don't do it in an area next to an oven that's hot. Because we're concerned that the heat of the oven will also cause things to become chametz. Bet you can't leave it there without being involved with it. Afilu rega echad, right? Even for a moment. The calls manshmet asking ba, and as long as you're dealing with it, afilu kol hayom, even if it takes a very long time, eino machmitz, right? It will not become chametz. And if you left it without any asek, shiur, the amount of time of a meal, that's the amount of time it takes you to walk the distance of a mem yud lamed, not a mile, but a meal. Havi chametz, that will render it chametz. V'shiur meal, how long is a meal? Havi revi'it sha'ah, a quarter of an hour, which is 15 minutes. V'chelek me'esrim min hasha'ah, plus 1/20th of an hour. 1/20th of an hour is 3 minutes. So a quarter of an hour and a 20th of an hour equals our classic 18 minutes. So now, the Shulchan Aruch had said over here the issue is being near an oven and constantly working on it. Okay, so Rav Shlomo Kluger again, who was against the machine matzahs, he said, who's to say that what the machine does on it, that fulfills the requirement of asek, of dealing with it, and the machines produce heat, and therefore it causes the dough to become hotter than normal. Others respond that if you'll see the machinery, you'll see there's no concern, and there's no difference between the metal and using one's hands. It's not causing any more heat, and that's not going to be an issue. Another issue that came up, and I would say nowadays, certainly, that the way the machines work, it is very, very efficient. Is there a problem with square matzot? Right? We take that for granted, but that was not always the case. Keep in mind, matzot were always round. Then it was the machine matzot which started with these square matzot. So the original matzot came in sheets, and the operators, in order to make it look more traditional, would use a cookie cutter-like device to make them round. Okay, so the machine matzot were also round. Those who objected to machine matzot had said there were two problems. One problem is the Gemara says you can't use a mold to make your matzot. And this is like making a mold. And others countered, the mold is a problem because it sits in that mold, and then it's going to be a problem that it will sit there and become chametz. But that's not what's happening over here. They're slicing and cutting it off. It's not a mold. Others say that a problem was as follows, that the edges were probably put back into the machine. So it was being, to get back in with the rest of the dough. So it might be taking too long, right? And others noted that the entire process, including the baking of the edges that might have been put back in, takes a maximum of 5 minutes. Right? Our matzot don't take anywhere near 18 minutes. Right? They move. Right? So it's not going to be an issue. Some actually preferred the matzot to be square. Some because that way you don't have the issue of the mold or of the leftover corners going back in. And some, right, and Rav Sofer, the Ksav Sofer actually, he said, right, well, some said the pasuk, the word ugot matzot. Ugot normally means uga, like cakes of matzah, but ag uga means a circle. Right? So they learned from there that the matzot is supposed to be round. The Ksav Sofer said that no, the square is a remez, is a hint to the ingathering from all of the corners of the earth. Now, what's interesting here on a broader scale, that Rabbi Flug points out, is on a hashkafic level. Machinery makes things easier, makes things often better, but it changes the way that we do things. And sometimes we like to do things the way we do things. You know, tefillin. Our tefillin, the way they're made today, tefillin need to be square. They are perfectly square. A lot more square than the Vilna Gaon or the Chavetz Chaim's tefillin could ever possibly have been. Because we have machinery, and we have different presses. There's when I went last year with the Bar Mitzvah family, we went to the tefillin factory, and we saw how they actually make the tefillin, and the amount of pressure that's brought to bear on these leather hides to put them into the shape that they are. So some say, Hachadash Asur min HaTorah. Right? Chadash literally means the new produce until the Omer is brought. Right? But they say in general, Chadash, innovations. That's not for us. Right? We do things in our traditional manner.
Rabbi?
Yes.
If I want to make matzah, is there a special bracha that I recite before I begin the process?
No.
Okay,
but I would urge you not to try to make your own matzah at home.
No.
Right.
I brought that up not because I have any intention. No, because I could see where the machine matzah, one would have an objection, because if you had to make a bracha before you made the matzah, then no one made a bracha before the machine matzah. That was the reason for my question.
But even over there, I would say, even if, look, there is no bracha, but one does say, I'm doing this l'shem for the sake of the matzah. And the same way that when, as the machine is going, or when they're feeding the machine, whatever they're doing with the machine, they say, or they're turning it on, we're doing this for the sake of the matzah, of the mitzvah. right? Perhaps they could have emailed to make, I hear you saying, perhaps not. Yeah, but there is no bracha that goes before.
Anywhere do they talk about the heat at which the matzah must be baked?
Yes, yes.
Because obviously it's got some relation to the 18 minutes, otherwise.
Correct. And our matzah ovens are at such, I think like 700, 800 degrees, right? That it goes in, literally they have it on a pole, they roll it out, and seconds later, they are scooping it up and taking it off. Rolling it out, scooping it up, right? Not a minute. Definitely not a minute. Maybe it's 10, 20, 30, 40 seconds. But it's it's super hot in there, and it just bang, it just bakes it.
Okay, but the handmade shmura matzah, there must be some relationship between the 18 minutes and the heat.
It's a lot less than 18 minutes. It doesn't get close to 18 minutes. Right, the whole process doesn't get to 18 minutes.
You mean to come up with the 18 minutes to begin with?
What's the 18 minutes?
That was Machmitz.
Yes, that it could become chametz if it were to sit, but we don't allow it to sit at all, and the whole process goes a lot faster. That's if it were left sitting, then after 18 minutes we'll say that it has been compromised. When I used to join a group when I lived in Israel, and we used to actually make the matzahs, so there, every 18 minutes we would stop everything and sand everything down, clean everything off, and then start the whole process again. But during those 18 minutes, it wasn't one matzah that was made. Right? It was a whole series of matzot that went out. But beginning to end, 18 minutes, stop. The wooden poles that we use, everything got sanded down and then started again. Yeah.
The factories that make shmura do that too.
Yeah.
Stop and they clean.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Now that was so. It was the Chasam Sofer who said Ein Chadash Tachat Chadash Asam in Torah. His son, the Katav Sofer, right? He said that this is an issue as a challenge in the machine matzah, but he writes that the quality and the standard of the machine matzah are much better than the hand-baked matzah, and therefore it requires a serious consideration. Right? So, it seems according to him that Ein Chadash is Aser, but we do need to have an open mind towards the benefits of technology. Tefillin is an example that I mentioned, that where it has improved our observance of the mitzvot tremendously. Interestingly, Rav Shlomo Kluger, again, who was very much against it, said it will take away jobs from the poor, who were often employed at the matzah bakeries. And a response to that is that you can't mix business and tzedakah, right? We need to find the most efficient way to produce matzah, making matzah affordable for even poor people. And when it comes to helping the poor, we need to find ways to help to take care of the poor. So, machine matzah, in terms of being kosher for Pesach, it's certainly kosher for Pesach, right, under the right supervision. Now, you do have to be careful, because some boxes of matzah will say on it chametz, right? It's made for all year round. So clearly, of course, you have to make sure you're buying kosher l'Pesach. The egg matzot should not be used unless a person is old and ill and unable to use the regular matzot. Otherwise, the egg matzot should not be used throughout the entire Pesach, right? Unless a person needs it. For the Seder, there is a requirement to use shmura matzah for the Seder. There is machine shmura and there is hand shmura. Ideally, it's best to use the hand shmura at the Seder, at least for the mitzvah of eating for the Seder plate, the matzah that you're eating, to fulfill your mitzvah of eating matzah that's at the two Seders.
Is it identified on the box if it's machine or hand?
Usually.
The machine are the small square boxes, and the hand are the bigger ones, are the round ones. Yeah. Nowadays, the hand ones are the shmura, are the hand. The big round ones are hand, and the square smaller ones are machine. Right. I got yesterday. Costco has hand shmura matzah, $14.99 for a pound, which is a pretty good price. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I had mentioned we have enough time. There was, in 1943, there was a court case of the Manischewitz Company versus the Commissioner of the IRS, Internal Revenue Service. Okay? And the issue was as follows. The Manischewitz had made a donation to the Manischewitz Yeshiva of Palestine, right? This is before the state of Israel was declared. At that time it was called Palestine. They made a donation to the yeshiva, and they had deducted that as an ordinary and necessary business expense. Okay? They deducted that as a business expense. The IRS had denied it as being a business expense. And they are now petitioning that they were correct in considering it as a business expense. And here are the findings of fact. Okay, petitioner's business, the manufacture and sale of matzot and unleavened bread, similar to, this is the court case, the court proceedings, papers. Similar to a cracker, was founded at least 40 years ago by Rabbi Dov Ber Manischewitz, the father of present officers of petitioner. In about 1914, he founded the Manischewitz Yeshiva of Palestine, a small theological school, hereinafter referred to as the Yeshiva, to provide rabbinical training for advanced scholars of the Orthodox Jewish faith. Since 1920, he has made annual payments to the Yeshiva as follows, right? It started with $1,400 in 1920, and was up to $2,600 in 1947. Now, $2,600 is a nice donation today. In 1940s money, right, I would say it's probably about, $100,000 to $200,000 of today, right, in today's market. It's a serious donation. About 70% of the petitioner's income is derived from the sale of matzot for consumption during the 8 days of Passover. Observance of Orthodox Jewish faith requires that food partaken of at any time be kosher, prepared in accordance with the dietary laws of the faith. A dietary law of the Orthodox faith is that only matzos prepared under the supervision of an Orthodox Jewish rabbi may be consumed. An Orthodox Jew will not buy matzah for use during Passover unless he is assured they meet the requirements of his faith. To give this assurance, the package of petition matzahs has printed upon it in Yiddish and English a hechsher, meaning rabbinical certification that it meets all Orthodox requirements. Petitioner is the only matzahs manufacturer which receives an annual hechsher from the Union of Orthodox Jewish Rabbis, the OU, of the United States and Canada, the only organization of its kind that consists of between 400 and 500 members. The hechsher from the Union aids petitioner in making sales of its Passover matzot. Petitioner's association with the Yeshiva in Palestine was of some aid in obtaining the annual hechsher from the Union. Okay? Here's where the business expense comes in. At the yeshiva, the students are taught to perpetuate the dietary requirements of the Orthodox Jewish faith, including consumption of matzos at Passover, in conformity of religious law. Now, pursuant to request, petitioner annually furnishes the student of the yeshiva with matzos during their use during the Passover holidays. Yeshiva graduates teach as rabbis in Palestine, Europe, and South America. They have the name Manischewitz associated with them, and are helping to overcome the impression of Orthodox European Jews that American machine-made matzos are not kosher. Okay, that's the battle over here. The Jews are coming into America from Europe. They're not used to this. So their perception is the machine matzos are not kosher. For obvious reasons, the Manischewitz Company wants them to understand that it is kosher. Thereby, this hechsher is of great importance, as is the teachers, the rabbanim, who have been through the Manischewitz yeshiva. Petitioner uses its association I'm just finishing my class. Petitioner used its association with the yeshiva for advertising purposes. It has the exclusive right to place its advertising on synagogue calendars published by the Hebrew Publishing Company. These calendars also include religious laws, ethics, and customs. After referring to the spirit of the Jewish people in one of the calendars, it is stated, in this very spirit are conducted the affairs of the Manischewitz Matzot Company, one of the most prominent firms in America. They hold high and dear the Manischewitz Yeshiva in Jerusalem, the holy city, which their father founded. The labor of spreading Torah goes on stronger than ever before. On another calendar appears the following. In Cheshvan, a new term begins. Small Jewish children, Hebrew schools, yeshiva men, yeshivas, all begin the new term. And in Israel, the voice of Torah resounds from the famous Manischewitz Yeshiva in the holy city of Yerushalayim. The famous founder of Manischewitz Matzot Company, Rabbi Dov Ber Manischewitz, has thus fulfilled his duty to Torah by founding a yeshiva in Jerusalem. So they very carefully, right, very intentionally connect their matzah company to their yeshiva to try to give it credibility to these Jews who have come from Europe and are not used to this newfangled machine matzot. The sons, the calendar continues. The sons of Rabbi Dov Manischewitz, the present owners of the Manischewitz Matzot Company, follow in the footsteps of their father and maintain that Manischewitz Yeshiva in Jerusalem. The following appeared in 1931 in Jewish daily newspapers in New York, Chicago, Cleveland, Philadelphia, Montreal, and Toronto. Famous Manischewitz Yeshiva, which Rabbi Dov Manischewitz founded 60 years ago in the holy city of Jerusalem, greatest rabbis and giants of Torah, which Yeshiva has produced to date, brothers Manischewitz maintain this important Torah institution since the demise of their father. Right? And all these different articles that go on that. The brothers have sought to create an institution. Now this is being offered to the judge now. The brothers Manischewitz have sought to create an institution which would immortalize the memory of their father, and which would also express its ideals and principles, which would deal to their father, right? And this yeshiva has earned a great name in the holy city. Petitioners' association with the yeshiva in Palestine was beneficial in publicizing petitioners' product. The payments for support of the yeshiva have been made from combined religious, charitable, personal, and business motives. That's what was presented to the judge, and the opinion of Judge Opper is as follows. Because the Hebrew Theological Seminary in Palestine, which was the recipient of petitioner's payment, does not qualify under Internal Revenue Code 23Q, defining organizations which contributions by code are deductible, so therefore it can't be considered a charitable deduction. Therefore, petitioner must seek to establish its right to a deduction as an ordinary and necessary business expense under the more general provisions of Section 23A. Right? So it's not a charitable, right? We would say it's not a 501(c)(3), therefore it can't be a charitable deduction, but they are petitioning that is a business expense. Such was the posture of all religious and charitable contributions before the Revenue Act of 1935, by which Section 23Q first allowed deductions to be made by corporations. The law developed up to that time was in accord with respondents' regulations, which are not substantially dissimilar to those here involved, require the donations to bear a direct relationship to the corporation's business and be made with a reasonable expectation of a financial return commensurate with the amount of the donation. Okay, so it has to have a direct relationship to the business, and there has to be a financial return commensurate to the amount of the donation. You donate $10,000, you're going to make $5 from it, that's not going to work. Although there can be little doubt that the contributions of the seminary were prompted by a complex of motives, right? Admittedly so. The desire to make a religious contribution and to preserve an institution founded by the father of petitioners' present officers, that will not disqualify the deduction as a business expense provided there are also reasonably evident business ends to be served. So the fact that you want to give to a yeshiva, and it's your father's yeshiva, and that's where you want to do it, that will not negate if there are, in fact, business gains made, that will not disqualify the deduction as long as there are reasonably evident business ends to be served. And the intention to serve them, those business, appear adequately from the record. Meaning clearly this is helping their business. It's clearly helping their business. They clearly have other motives also, but it's clearly helping their business. The maintenance of the seminary and the family name and its apparent advantages, both from an advertising standpoint and as a means of demonstrating the close relationship between petitioner and Orthodox Jewry, seem to us adequately brought forth by the record. The deduction as an ordinary and necessary business expense should have been allowed. So he ruled in favor of Manischewitz that it should be used and counted as a proper business expense.
Isn't that a university still exists?
I don't know
I
that it
never
does.
heard of it.
I never heard of it either.
I heard of Prager University.
Yeah, I never heard of it over there. Yes, Jan.
Does that yeshiva still exist?
Are you getting a drink?
Manischewitz yeshiva?
I don't know. I don't know if it does.
Bob?
Okay, my
Bob?
friends. We'll call over
Are you
here.
getting a
Those who had bread, please do get together
You have the time
and
for
bench.
it, but
Thank you, Doe. I'll take the
you
chip.
have a good soda.